Welcome back to D&D Beyond. I am back with our own Michael Galvis, and we are so excited because today we get to talk to y'all about the really, really cool stuff coming your way in the Wild Beyond the Witchlight and Strixhaven, a Curriculum of Chaos. And we get to do that because this weekend was D&D Live, and it was, first of all, it was so cool. Michael, did you have a favorite thing that, like, you popped in and checked out from D&D Live? Because it's a big tie for me.
Yeah, for me, the big thing that I was drawn to was definitely any type of discussion over these books. I love to see the kind of conversations that these books spark, what kind of information we're going to get out of these books, and then, how that's going to be inspiring other people in their own games.
And those games will be hopefully as varied and bonkers as the wonderful ones from this weekend. I have to give a special shout out to Amy Vorpal running just a very memorable Feywild adventure. But they were all excellent. And we got lots of juicy info that we can talk through with everybody here now. So let's get into it. The Wild Beyond the Witchlight. We announced it a little bit ago, but we had to just tease it a little bit. And now, those of you who were like, that's interesting, is that a circus? So many points to everybody who said that, because well spotted. The Wild Beyond the Witchlight. I'm getting ahead of myself. Here's the deal, the official deal for the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, a Feywild adventure. Once every 8 years, the fantastic Witchlight Carnival touches down on your world, bringing joy to one settlement after the next. Its owners, Mr. Witch and Mr. Light, know how to put on a good show. But there's more to this magical extravaganza than meets the eye. The carnival is a gateway to a fantastic Feywild domain unlike anything found on the material plane. Time has not been kind to this realm, however, and dark days lie ahead, unless someone can thwart the dastardly schemes of the Hourglass Coven. The Wild Beyond the Witchlight is an adventure that will take you from levels 1 to 8. You will discover the journey from the Witchlight Carnival to Prismere, a Feywild domain of delight. It's going to have an amazing, cool map built into it. We'll get into all of that. And I do have to give an extra shout out to everyone. This is going to be a deep cut from a few months ago. But when we were talking magical carnivals before, I remember a lot of our viewers were like, I can't believe no one is bringing up Ray Bradbury right now. So I think you'll all be very happy to know that the pull quote on this one is, something wicked this way comes. All right, first thoughts, Michael, the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. It's going to be our Feywild adventures originating in the Witchlight Carnival. What do you think?
All I gotta say is I love a good carnival, but that description just tells me things aren't going to be that fun. Or they're going to be fun, but they're going to be very, very dangerous. I definitely remember, you would have to remind me the name of the Domain of Dread. It was a carnival in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft.
Carnival, but it's Isolde is the main figure in it.
Yeah, so like I get very maybe I'm a little traumatized by Van Richten's, like maybe I'm looking at a very nice. Yeah, maybe this Witchlight book is going to be very kind and innocent, but the carnival domain definitely gives me vibes of like everything starts off nice, but then suddenly some terrible, awful things start to happen. Who knows?
It's a domain of delight. What's the worst that can happen?
I actually think in D&D Live they described the book as like the antithesis of Van Richten's Guide. Like they did describe like, hey, this is going to be this is a lighter setting. So keep that in mind. I don't want people to think like, oh crap, this is another horror setting, because it definitely is not.
But I think it is going to have within it. They talked about how they were inspired by a wide range of things, from sort of lighter fairy tale influences too. And anyone who is like a fairy tale nerd can tell you fairy tales get dark. So there is a lot of room for different sorts of inspiration and tonal work in that, and in the premise that nothing is as it seems. And we are seeing some absolutely beautiful preview art. I do want to dwell on this one, because if you're looking at that going, is that a tiny baby displacer kitty? You are correct. Its name is Star. We learned that it is a formerly of the Witchlight Carnival. I am already very attached, and cannot wait to learn more about just basically everything in this. Michael, this book is my jam. I'm so excited about the Wild Beyond the Witchlight and about this adventure. And it was great. If folks missed it, you should definitely check out, I'm just going to plug here, Chris Perkins talking about this adventure and how long he's waited to put it together, and what makes it interesting to him and a different challenge for him as an adventure writer, and is something he's wanted to get to for a long, long time. I thought was really, really fascinating.
I believe he said that he first started on this adventure for 4th edition, and then it kind of got put on the back burner until 5th edition. And you know, something that I really love about this adventure, and you know, we can talk about this more at length later, but is the fact that you don't have to fight anything through this adventure, because you know the Feywild is all politics, right? Like the Summer Court,
or can be, right? Like is.
Yeah, you get to decide. You basically get to decide, and that's what I'm really excited about. This is because you can run this as like a traditional adventure, but also if you just want to be able to hash things out with the Fae, you definitely can. And yeah, I'm excited about that.
I really loved hearing about that, and especially hearing about sort of the twinkle in his voice. As I mean, how do you resist a challenge like Chris Perkins being like, we've never done this before, we thought we'd try it and see how it goes. He wanted to go somewhere he'd never been, is the way he described doing a Feywild adventure. And so yes, this adventure will technically, to the clever party, offer potential solutions to everything that avoid combat, although it will also have combat and have new creatures and new options. It will have the option for combat. Let me be more clear. Let's see.
Yeah,
so what
I can
else
tell you, I've been. I'm sorry. I'm just so obsessed with the fact that you don't have to be in combat for this, because I've been.
It's a design challenge of a totally different type.
Yeah, I've been in the campaign for about 2.5 years now, and we are so against combat. We have maybe one combat every like 10 sessions, right? And the combats are very plot driven. These are like the boss monsters that you have to deal with. Those are like the only combats that we're running into. And so I get so excited for this adventure because I can totally see like myself and my fellow players being like, yes, let's do this. Let's make friends. Let's pass rumors around and sabotage people behind their backs and not get, you know, our heads chopped off or something. Because yeah, why not? We're all very charismatic people. So let's put that to use. Let's weaponize the inner bard.
I love that, because you know I've played a lot of different games and a lot of different systems for many, many years, and I love leaning into the fact that there are lots of different ways to do challenge. And obviously D&D is very well suited for telling battle stories, especially small party battle stories, but it has the room in it to do a lot of different stuff. There's 3 pillars: combat, exploration, and roleplay, and 2 out of 3 of those don't have to do with killing anything. So can you solve problems? Can you solve puzzles? Can you pay attention to clues? Can you finesse a social or political situation or whatever might come up? I love that that's an option here that's going to play to the play styles and preferences of a ton of groups and DMs. But that you also have the other option. Just like, look, we made you some paths. Have a good time.
Yeah.
So this, of course, this beautiful, gorgeous map of the Witchlight Carnival also features, you'll notice some interactive features in the features. Oh, shame on me. Has top left and bottom right here, 2 sort of trackable to me. Like, I love this kind of design, this sort of semi like traditional board gamey interactivity element that we kind of already saw with the planchette and spirit board for Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. That's just playing with the way you can interact with your materials that I think is very cool. And
Yeah, I
let's see,
agree.
we have
Just looking at this, when they first showed off this artwork, when I first saw it, I was just my immediate thought was also board games, and the fact that this sort of design kind of encourages you to just check out each of the different locations here, because we're going to see a lot of details about this carnival, which is going to help serve as like the gateway into the adventure, just in the same way that it's the gateway into the Feywild. So I'm really excited to see all of the different sorts of games and details that we're going to see out of all of these very specific locations on the map.
And what I love also is that there is so much richness built into this adventure. So many people that you're going to encounter, and creatures and NPCs and settings, but they've also designed it so that this carnival can visit you wherever you are. You can plug this into whatever plane or setting you have been hanging out in. The carnival can come to town. That's what they do. And the rest is adventure, of course. So we also, to get into the nitty gritty, we're getting some stuff with this book. And we love stuff. As you know, we're D&D players. So we get the Witchlight Carnival is going to service that setting, can be dropped into any campaign setting. We are going to officially have 2 more playable races. You can be a fairy, or you can be a Harengon, which is the rabbit folk race. Some of y'all will have played with the playtest material for the rabbit folk, but they are officially named Harengon, which is apparently the idea of one of the co-writers on this book, Ari Levitch. And they're partly named because they do move. So they're Harengon. And I love that name. Did I mention this book is my jam? So fairies, Harengon, you'll get 2 new character backgrounds. The Fey Lost for characters who grew up in the Feywild, and the Witchlight Hand for characters who work at the Witchlight Carnival, which sounds roleplay delicious for me. All the encounters will include non-combat options. And finally, in terms of the stuff we're getting, in addition to all the cool monsters and settings, we are going to see some very old friends. Some extremely old D&D friends. The adventure is going to feature some characters from classic D&D lore of the 1980s whose action figures, who knows, you might have at home. Please tell us in the comments if you do, because that's cool as heck. If you've got Warduke, Strongheart, Kelek, or mysterious yet to be named other classic D&D characters somehow working in to Prismeer and the Domain of Delight and the Witchlight Carnival. And I should probably have mentioned this at the start, but if you want to go into this adventure knowing absolutely nothing, this might not be the video for you. We promise we're not handing out big spoilers. But yeah, thoughts on reaching that hourglass way back to the 1980s lore of D&D?
I think it's so clever because, the Feywild time there is funky. You could be in the Feywild for a week, return to the material plane, and it's been a year. So I think adding in all of these Easter eggs from D&D's history is just like another great nod to that theme. So it's kind of like you're going to be reading through this adventure as a dungeon master, and then you're going to be going through time yourself, like reliving these memories of all of these classic characters through D&D lore. So I think that's just so smart and such a great way to just pay homage to like all of the years that we have spent in like previous editions, and now we find ourselves in 5th edition, or maybe you're new and this is your first introduction to these characters, and then you get to read all of the lore of all of these previous characters, and the more that you play D&D, the more that you understand Witchlight and its contents. I don't know, it gives me very I just get goosebumps, because anytime that there's like an Easter egg in a movie, I just lose my mind. I'm just like, oh my god, I know that thing, and I just like have to pause the movie, and then I watch like 10 TikToks about this one Easter egg.
So your DM for Witchlight is going to need to invent a mechanic whereby, like, oh, we've lost Michael. Roll to see how long it takes him to get back out of the research hole.
Yeah. Hey, maybe I'm
see.
part of the Lorehold College after all.
I do wonder, like, we all have a little bit of Lorehold to us, I think. We wouldn't be the D&D people we are without it. We have an important question from Melly DM. What is cuter, an Almirage, a Tressym, or a Displacer Kitten? My heart is currently all Displacer Kitty, and I'm very sorry about that, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, I have to go with Displacer Kitty. Star is the star of the show for me.
So we also, let's see, we learned that a little bit that Chris Perkins described this adventure as kind of a reflection of Curse of Strahd, because you're going into an area where that territory sort of all relates to a specific person or entity. And he talked about sort of as they get to establish the lore of the Feywild a little bit more deeply for 5th edition, talking about these specific domains, whether those are sort of separate entities or regions, is a little nebulous so far, but these domains each come under an Archfey. And of course, we've heard of Archfey. We've been talking about them in terms of subclass options. We've talked about them in terms of lore and some appearances in other adventures. But we are going to be journeying to a domain who presumably has an Archfey. But as we know from the description, not everything is going sort of according to plan here. And we're starting to see glimpses of some really interesting NPCs we might encounter along the way on this journey. I'm not going to say you should go look up the WizKids minis, but they're very cute. But in terms of Feywild lore, we also learned, or we get to share, that the Feywild is emotionally responsive, which I thought was a really cool and intriguing twist on what we already know about the danger and the heightened sense of reality in the Feywild, which is to say, if you are weeping under a tree, it may start weeping right back at you, you know? Which means what does that look like when it's a more sinister presence or a more powerful presence, and how can that shape an area or its dangers? And those are questions I'm very excited to get answers to. Michael, thoughts on the Feywild lore?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of going back to how your emotions can affect the world around you. That's a perfect reflection of the domains of dread. Each of the domains of dread are a reflection of the individuals who are the dark lords of those domains. And so in a sense, we are seeing that beautiful mirroring between Ravenloft and the Feywild. I'm also really happy that the Witchlight is easy to inject into your story. So if you're mid-campaign, you're like, hey, I just want my players to enjoy a short adventure in the Feywild. Maybe I just want to run that, the first chapter of the book or so. Then you can easily just say, hey, you come to town and there's a carnival here. And suddenly your players, the second they step into the carnival grounds, they get to decide, like, all right, are we going to stay here? Or are we going to venture into the Feywild further? Or are we going to go back to our normal boring lives on the material plane? And I think the decision is very obvious. You definitely want to live on the Feywild. Just don't anger any Eladrin, because they will chop your head off. Eladrin are very scary. Everyone really likes Eladrin, but they freak me out because they are very temperamental, and I'm not about that. I just want everyone to be having a good time.
Well, I think you just have to go in and make your bargains clear, right? You have to learn the rules of the place and try to operate according to them and see what happens. But you got to go to the Feywild so you can see things like, and I was frantically getting inspired and jotting things down during some of these talks, because I know that we can talk about giant dragonflies you can ride and giant cranes and maybe giant owls. And Mika Burton was excited about potentially riding unicorns. I feel like that was semi-confirmed. I'm very open to more details on that front. But which will you make first, a fairy or a Harengon?
Oh gosh, they're both so adorable. But I do love my rabbit folk, my Harengon. I saw the UA and I absolutely fell in love with them in the UA. So, we'll see how they turn out in the book when they are released. But yeah, just thematically, they're perfect. They're just so cute. I love my small races. I love anything that you could just want to like pinch their cheeks at, and I this is definitely the race for it.
All that cuteness, so much danger, though, because of course you are still an adventurer with some surprises up your small to tiny sleeve.
What
Canonically
about you?
small, but tiny.
Which of the two races do you prefer?
I changed my mind as I was asking the question because I was like, obviously Harengon, and then I was like, but fairies, playable fairies, what? I am very intrigued by the Feylost background, though. I'm very curious what that'll come with, and I love the idea of working that into some of what we've sort of heard about the potential plot hooks for the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and just in general, very excited for this journey. I love this from V2 Blast. Question: when you're DMing something in the Feywild, what sort of media or fiction do you take inspiration from?
Ooh, I like that. Ooh, gosh, why did my immediate first thought be American Horror Story? 'Cause they had a
No,
whole
because you're
circus.
tapping into classic theatricality. No, I think you're actually dead on in some of those things. That I feel like I don't have a ton of experience with the Ryan Murphy verse, but what I've gathered about it is that it's a lot of uh heightened characterization, drawing on classic tropes and subverting them in surprising ways, and drawing on the traditions of various kind of theatrical trappings, which I feel like all belong in like a semi-haunted carnival that opens you to the Feywild, right?
I don't know. It's super dark, Amy.
Okay.
I don't know if I would recommend it for most people. You know why? You know why my mind jumped to it is because I've been DMing Rime of the Frost Maiden, and I started it when I was reading Van Richten's, and so a lot of the stuff that I planned for my players is like very horror, very spooky themed. But yeah, on a lighter note, I would have to say, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the character from Avatar: The Last Airbender. This particular character could manipulate your chi, and she had a super
Oh,
bubbly
Ty Lee.
Ty Lee, yes, I love her. Everything about her personality, I would love to sort of inject into this story. That sort of like very high energy, but also pretty chaotic. They're good, but they're also bad, and
I
they
would
just want to be
actually
your friend, but they'll also beat you up.
May and Ty Lee, I feel like would make such a good like set of NPCs for the Feywild, where one is just sort of like weirdly neutral and it's sort of unsettling in the Feywild, where you're like, I don't know where that's going. And then Ty Lee is like super over the top and expressive. I'm very into it. I love this concept. On previous streams for this, I loved the suggestion that Willy Wonka as an archfey could provide a lot of inspiration. But of course, anything that's sort of centered on children's stories and the power of imagination, I feel like has a pretty good in to the Feywild. And of course, there's just a hugely rich tradition of fairy tales from around the world that play on monstrous archetypes or childhood hopes and fears or dreams and imagination that can be pulled in as needed for the Feywild. But specifically, you also get things like Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which is sort of the twin, like, we've been talking so much about the Gothic with Ravenloft, but there's that twin side of Victoriana that's like Gothic to Edward Gorey to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I don't think Gorey's technically Victorian, just go with me here. I'm talking about overlapping influences that kind of mesh together for interesting storytelling possibilities. And then, of course, I would be lying if I said I ever did any fairy thing without thinking about Neil Gaiman's Sandman and Terry Pratchett's Lords and Ladies. So that's maybe some. Oh, and clearly Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes is just right on the box as an influence for the sinister and the unexpected and the life-changing. So those are maybe more answers than were strictly required. But did I mention this is my jam? Final thoughts on things that are already jumping out at you or you're excited for in the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, Michael?
I am excited to be confusing my players at every turn. The Feywild is very chaotic. Love that you mentioned Alice in Wonderland, because I love that in that story there's a lot of unanswered questions. Like Alice is just like, "What's going on?" And everyone's just like,
"How do the potions work? No one's gonna tell you." Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. What about you?
I I I'm I want all the tasty lore of the Feywild. I want to know, like, I love that we're getting maps to go with all this new territory so that I can sort of infer the qualities and maybe make my own domains in the future, but like it's a playground I want to go to. It is all of the qualities of the Wizard of Oz and the unsettling qualities of the Wiz. Like, they both have positive and unsettling qualities, but like those are the kinds of visions that I get so excited about, and that I can't wait to encounter and probably be tricked and have my heart broken by in the wild beyond the witchlight. So you can pre-order that right now if this adventure sounds good for you or for your table. If you just want to play a fairy or a Harengon, you can pre-order that right now on D&D Beyond, and we will be talking a whole lot more about it